Welcome to the Lila Life Show. I'm your host, Linda Andrews, and you've tuned in to the right place to up-level in your life and business. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Lila Life Show. This is your host, Linda Andrews, and I have the amazing, talented, beautiful Jess Pfeffer on from Real Connection SoFla. And thank you for being here, Jess.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I want to just take a moment to spotlight you and the work you're doing, the Chief Connecting Officer, doing, talent agency, correct? Conscious event planning and wealth advisor. So doing some really powerful work, helping people up leveling. And I can't wait for you to share the pillars that you're working in. But you have a background as yoga. We've shared some very common loves and passions. So I'm excited to have you on the show today. And I think just in our pre-show notes, having that moment of grounding, it's like remembering that in the past almost 2 years, people may have felt some life shakeups and needing to reground and seeing like, whoa, where am I coming out of all this, or how am I showing up in all this? And certainly you've been going through that process with yourself and from my opinion, eloquently doing it. But I'd love to hear a little bit about how you started your company and why and where you're at today. And we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, yes, you definitely said that well of like how we're coming out of this in this moment, right? Because, when I started Real Connections a little over 2 years ago, the intention was just that, was to bring people together. And then, fast forward when the pandemic hits, I'm like, oh, wow, we're like doing the opposite of what I was intending to do. And, then there's the moment of like practice what we preach and being flexible and, pivoting in ways that's like, okay, well, if this wasn't working, it doesn't mean we can't do it, right? It doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just means there's maybe another route to it. So that's kind of how Real Connection started, was because I wanted to create conscious communities and bring a lot of the holistic experts that I have been so lucky to meet, including yourself, through our friend Danny. And then because I was co-owning a juice bar in Delray with my sister, again, I was just kind of surrounded by a lot of people trying to improve their health and well-being, whether that was through food, that also became through the products we put on our body because we had the market as well. And I just started meeting more and more yoga teachers and healers and Reiki and all the yumminess that we love. And I realized that maybe, having that creative mentality to want to share as a holistic practitioner doesn't necessarily mean that all the practitioners, teachers are also able to market themselves and to promote and have that kind of business acumen that I luckily, from my own experiences as an entrepreneur with the juice bar, some past corporate experience, and I used to teach elementary school. I realized that a lot of those experiences and lessons would be a great thing that I can also share with other health and wellness experts. So that's kind of where the whole idea of a holistic talent agency came from. I kind of decided to say I was the Jerry Maguire, but for, yoga teacher. So that's kind of how it started to snowball. And the more I was trying to connect them to the community and help them set up workshops, events, retreats, I was reminded how much I love that, because I also used to throw events in Miami Beach many, many moons ago at a hotel. And it was similar, obviously, in a very more of a nightclub vibe. So not too similar, but it was the same thing, right? Like, how can we find a common place for like-minded people, or for people who are just curious to learn more about what yoga is and how to live it on and off the mat? So that's when I decided to add the event planning, and then creating my own day retreats and wellness experiences, but still keeping in mind that as a talent agent, I really wanted to showcase and upstage those teachers. So I was never teaching, although I am also a yoga teacher and a mental health therapist. I was just really trying to spotlight what they're able to offer and allow them to show up and do their craft and not have to worry about, like I said, the marketing, collecting money, the waivers, just the back end things. So that was the second part. And then the third part, as you mentioned, the wealth advisor, WELLTH, kind of came through research and other people, using that term. I was like, wow, like again, that holistic approach of how we define success. And if we're
Mm.
able to be successful, whether that's financially or in our relationships, but not being able to take care of ourselves to be in a place to receive that, what's the point? Right? Why do we keep going and going if we're not able to enjoy it? So, being a wealth advisor, I meet with people one on one right now via Zoom, and we kind of go over the buckets and the pillars, and we notice what areas perhaps they want to work on. And then I connect them back to those holistic talent agent practitioners that I represent. So, it has this kind of, beautiful flow state of how it all connects.
I love that. And it's one of the things that's really coming through is like, even for you, but I see this with your clients, I'd imagine, and even who you're working through is like the word of flexibility. Like that feels just so important right now is this word flexibility and things that it's like not getting in your own way for what's trying to come through, the willingness to be flexible and open to what's going to come. And I'm wondering, like, is that something you're naturally gifted in? Like this was a pretty big disruption crisis that you couldn't necessarily plan for. And then how have you found tapping into flexibility and openness through that time? Like what's worked for you?
Well, as I said, since I launched it right before we kind of went into that lockdown, I ended up turning it into an online community. So it was a membership that everyone can sign up for, drop in for classes, or just create, a schedule for yourself.
Mhm.
And each week there were a variety of teachers teaching on Ayurveda, yoga, mindfulness, movement, all the things within the Real Connections realm. So I think for me, being flexible was, yeah, that kind of little girl in me was like, no, like this is supposed to be in person. And, I'm 100% extrovert. So for me to have to like come into this like recluse, moment of like, wait, now we're online. But then you flip the script. And before I was only able to showcase the lovely teachers in South Florida.
Mhm.
But once we became online, we were global. I had teachers in London. I had my sister who was in San Diego at the time teaching, New Jersey, New York, Oregon. My naturopath was teaching from there. So again, I guess that flexibility. I don't know if I would say it's natural. I think it's just
Mhm.
life experiences that have just taught me this is how it goes, right? And
Mhm.
we can resist it or we can just kind of go with it. So when a friend said, Jess, like just do it online, I was like, oh, what does that look like? And then, you start going and then I'm like, oh, this works. So it was a really good example of that for sure.
It's powerful. The with the different talent that you help manage, I'm curious, like what's getting the most attention right now? What are people needing the most support in? Are there some of your classes that are doing better than others? What are your personal favorites?
Sure, great question. I think more and more now, I think sleep is coming up a lot. So one of the women that I represent, Dr. Shivani Gupta, she is all about Ayurveda and turmeric and all that kind of Eastern practice. But now we're calling her the sleep queen because so many people, of course, with stress and our bodies in this like constant like go, go, go. And even right now, where we're on the computer, like when do we get a break? And then of
Mhm.
course later that comes up. We're not sleeping as well, or we're awake for, I was up at 6 thinking of things I had to do, and that's not usual how I am. But we all kind of fall into that. And I have to remind myself of those tips, tools, and techniques that I've learned from Shivani from her teaching online for Real Connections. She's been teaching in person now. We have a really great account at the Fontainebleau Hotel for their staff. And like, she's just that reminder of like, we need routines, we need regimens. And I think that has been, at least for me personally, a great reminder. So I would say sleep is a big focus. Of course, stress. So that's been coming up a lot. My sister teaches the embodiment yoga therapy, and that has a lot to do with like our, vagus nerve and teaching us really great tools on how to bring that back, how to get us to a more homeostasis and not allowing that fight or flight. So that's come up, and that has definitely attracted more people to some of our events and classes. And then probably thirdly is sound healing and sound bowls.
Mm.
And I've been working a lot with Jess Be Inspired, who's a Reiki practitioner as well as sound healing. And we've had some events together that I got to teach yoga, and then she ended it with sound bowls and, going around to everyone and just like reminded us again that like as much as we're living in this body, like there's so much more out there.
Mm.
There's such a greater experience in this human experience.
Yeah, this is reminding me too of like, for some people, like some of this work is not normal, right? Or they've never been to a yoga class. I've had clients in the past that they're like, I can't go to that yet. I have to get ready at home before I go to yoga. It's like, no, that's what the yoga class is for, right? And
Right.
so, and I think, the isolation or, people sort of being more introverted, whether they wanted to or not over this past time, it shifts things. I mean, there's times where I'm like, I'm about to have a panic attack, or I'm like, I'm having social anxiety that I never had this before. It can change things. And I think, especially with you and your buckets and the different pillars that you have, pillars being movement, mindfulness, nourishment, nature, and your buckets, you want to share your buckets?
Sure, I would love to. So there are six buckets, which I know a lot of people kind of categorize them as areas. I guess I looked at it as buckets because I pictured us like putting some sort of liquid into it and then noticing that while one bucket's full, a lot of times we kind of forget about the other buckets and they kind of like go this like up and down. And I think balance is what we're all striving for, at least I am. So the buckets I put into six categories. So we have romantic relationships, friendships, social connections, work, self, family, and community. And again, my example always is like, one of your girlfriends finally falls in love, has this great relationship, she's so happy, and like you haven't heard from her, or you're working so much, you're creating this amazing business, and you forget to like make dinner for your partner. And again, it's millions of examples, and we all do it. But I really believe that yoga and mindfulness and the pillars, if we can take a little bit of each of them, then we can at some point, not perfectly, because that's not the goal, but find a little bit more of that liquid per se in each of the six buckets.
Yeah, I love that it's reminding me of like when one's perfect and then like the other five are like, oh, there's just a drop in that bucket. Like gotta
Exactly.
move a little bit over here. And then you connect that to movement, mindfulness, nourishment, and nature for your events and your programming, I'm assuming. But this it's like the entry points, like what people find as that entry point. Is it nature? Is it movement? Like for me, it was always like such physical with fitness. And then it's like it opened up to so much more. Do you notice one getting more attention than the others in terms of what piques someone's initial curiosity? This is something I think so much about, like what's getting someone into the start of the transformation.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I love that you're self-aware to know that maybe movement is where you innately went to or you resonated with. I would say nature, I think with, everything going on the past year or so, people are so much more interested in like growing where you live and starting their own gardens. And, just the amount of time that people have to realize, or not should have had to go outside to feel a little bit safer. And, the more we learn about our bodies and our immune system and how important, vitamin D is. And, at this point too, we actually have research, empirical research that shows being in nature and forest bathing and, just touching the soil and grounding into the earth, that there really is so much more to it than just, oh, I went to the store and like I bought an apple, or I ate something very quickly and I didn't feel energized. So I think when it comes to nature, and that's why it's one of the pillars, I think it is attracting people. And then the beauty of what I love to create and the conscious, I guess, curation of it is a little bit of both. So one of the events we've been having every month is a picnic outside in nature in a gorgeous garden in Delray, where we also add some movement of yoga, breath work, sound healing, tarot cards. And again, it's a kind of, if you think about it, it kind of hits all of the pillars, right? We're going to get nourished with some yummy food. It's always vegan. We're going to get nature. Of course, we're in this gorgeous like setting outside and you feel like you're in this oasis. Movement, the vinyasa I do is a little bit of movement and it's obviously mindfulness as well. So it's probably a combo of both.
I love that. Oh my gosh. It's curious to me, you have such creativity. I can like see that beaming from you. And is this something that you've always felt tapped into, or do you feel like because you've had to be flexible that like you almost are able to tap into deeper levels of freedom with the creativity? It's like some of these events are just so beautiful.
Thank you. I definitely have to give credit to just the people that are around me. I mean, that's what real connections is. It is, yes, I'm the founder. Yes, I like to be the kind of puppeteer on the top. But like I said, other than a couple classes I'm teaching, it's really me just bringing in the community around me. So, yes, it's being flexible, but it's meeting someone that's like, I do tarot cards. I was like, oh, let's do an event together. Or this past week, I met a new friend, Carolina, who does silent discos with the
Oh,
headphones, and
yeah.
we start talking about conscious games. And yeah, in West Palm, I'm sure you know her. And we now have this idea to put conscious connecting games maybe for single people. And like I had the idea, like I'm always writing notes, but that's not something for me. I'm a one man team, right? Or one woman team rather. So when I meet these different people and I like, you see, I get lit up because I'm like, yes, like that's the missing pieces, right? That's how we collaborate. So I would definitely say that.
Oh, so good. So right now, like we were talking a little earlier about the division and like how people feel this divisive energy, maybe even more now than ever. Are there any practices that you're recommending for people to connect deeper into themselves and compassion for others at a time where like fear and divisiveness can feel like at an all-time high?
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's definitely been coming a lot for me, even just within my core family. We have very different views on everything.
Mhm.
And I'm having to remind myself again of the practice. What I preach is not to allow something that is bigger than us to really ruin or come in the way of something that's even bigger, which is our family, right?
Mm,
Is definitely one
mhm,
of the buckets. So I think for me is, as much as I like to be authentic and talk about anything and everything with everyone, I'm
mhm,
being a little bit more mindful of the topics and conversations, not necessarily to avoid them because they're going to come up, but just kind of respecting other people's opinions and
mhm,
possibly agreeing to disagree.
mhm,
So that I would say would be the first part. And then the second part, again, goes back to the pillars, is just making sure that we're hitting all of those elements. Like, so I go for a walk every morning as soon as I wake up. Sometimes, not always, will take off my shoes on my way back just to step in the grass.
mhm,
I will make sure that I have some sort of yoga practice, whether that's on my mat with asana, outside at a class, sometimes online. Of course, meditation, breathing, movement goes with the walk, right? Again, I like to combine them. So, like, I could walk inside. Sometimes I do exercise inside. But again, I'm trying to get that vitamin D. I'm trying to smell all the nature. I don't bring my phone with me. So that's how I disconnect
mhm,
while I'm connecting to nature. And then nourishment, I'm really big on eating all of the colors. I'm mostly plant based. I do eat fish and eggs just because I tried vegan and it ended up being more stressful than helpful. But with that said, I am really, really aware of what I'm putting in my body at all times. I mean, I literally look at everything and say, is this something that's going to make me feel better? It's going to make me feel worse. Is this going to just be like a second of joy and then perhaps a stomach ache later? Like, is it worth it? So I'm being more mindful of those things. And in terms of supplementation, there's always just kind of like arguments around it. I do think in the world that we're living in, as much as organic produce that I do eat, I don't think it's giving us the nutrients that we need. So I do take multis with vitamin D. I'm into quercetin right now for
mhm,
immune support. And elderberry syrup
mhm.
I'm really in. And vitamin D, like I said, you can get it outside, but that doesn't mean your body's absorbing it. So I also do take that as a supplement. So yeah, just bringing all the pillars again in a daily or even weekly practice.
I love to like you're living it. I think it can be easy to go through an experience like we're in with a business like yours, right? And it's like holistic health based and then go into fear and like freak out, and like go into whatever. I mean, and maybe you've had moments of that, but to really get a sense that you're grounding in to these pillars, living it, leading it, and inspiring others to do the same, it's at a time where you may be feeling 5 or 10% more vibrant than like the average Joe. And it's like, whoa, what's Jess doing? And I just feel so appreciative for you sharing, because it's never too late to start whatever even the one thing is. And it can shift. Like, you're like, right now I'm really loving, whatever. It's like, yeah, this is what's serving you right now. And like, maybe in a month, it'll be like turmeric times 1,000 or, whatever, it's like trying to find the supplement, but cool. There's something about what you said, like remembering that there's something bigger than even something this big. I don't know exactly how you said it, but like, and you're relating to family and for everyone, it's like those belief systems. It's like, we could talk about all the things, right? We could list all the things, all of them. I'm not going to list them all, but we could list all of them.
Sure.
And it's like, what's the bigger conversation? And to me, you represent that bigger conversation. It's like, yeah, like make your decision about X, Y, or Z, land wherever you're going to land. And then like, make sure you're doing these other things. And so like X, Y, or Z, let's say it's mass, vaccine, okay, whatever. It's like, great, make your decision. I see right now a lot of people, especially with like the family dynamic and even friend dynamic, it's like, you make your decision and you're in a respectful position, but like for some reason it turned into maybe more and different and bigger. But I think that to the extent that you're not doing all those things, like the other things, is like to the extent that it can become this like big distraction and division, the world that like each person's owning like their things. It's like, maybe they were respecting other people to own that. I don't know. What do you think? Like, does that feel like a part of it? Maybe there's not even a solve in this, but maybe it could be a tension releasing. It's like, I trust that I'm tending to the things that I need to spend my time, energy, and attention on. And like, I trust that other people are doing that too. Does that have the potential to be a peace building activity, or it's like not in today's environment?
I think that in today's environment, we need it, but I'm not sure if we're ready for it, right? Because, we have so much information coming at us at all times, social media, news, which I don't even watch because it confuses me, and like I said about being holistic, I've got my Western practices and my Eastern practice, and I believe in a little bit of both, right? It really goes back to like, picking and choosing, and just because it works for me doesn't mean it works for everyone else. But right now in this kind of, environment or the energy of this big divide, I think that it's just, again, unfortunate that we can have a position on something. It doesn't mean that everyone who's not on a position is wrong or bad. It's just different. And yeah, in a perfect world, if that even existed, we would all have some sort of, decision or an agreement on what works, and that goes with parenting, right? Which I'm not, but most of my friends are, and you can talk to one of them and they'll say like, oh, like this is what I'm supposed to do with my kids because I read this article, and then you'll literally hear the other one be like, oh no, like dairy. I have friends like, I need to keep giving my kids milk, and then I have my other side that's like, no, it's the worst thing ever. And like, I listen to both, and I would like to say in a very modest way, but like, I think that's one of my superpowers, is not allowing either extreme to make me feel a certain way. And that's political, that's everything. Like, I'm definitely scared. Like, I live a way right now based out of fear, but with reason behind it, and not just emotion, like logic, and it's kind of just looking at as a bigger picture, and not that it's something that I just naturally do. I work at it. I take a moment. I think a lot. I make sure that I kind of get the opinions of both sides, and then with as much logic and less emotion, then I make a decision. I say, oh, okay, like there's science, like I'm not a big pharma person. I don't take Tylenols when I have a headache. Like, that's not my go-to, but like, I have to trust something. And if I decide, or we decide as a collective, that this bigger thing that we're living in America and media is the devil and the worst thing out there, that is just going to trickle down to everything. And next thing you know, unless you live in like a commune or your own, earth ship, which is amazing. But if you're living in this government, in this world, or I'm living in it, there are some laws I have to go with. And
Mhm.
even if I don't agree with them, I'm choosing to be here. I voted for this. I'm an American citizen. This is my choice to be here. Then there's certain things I just have to trust. And I think right now a lot of people are not trusting, and now they're going down this spiral of, or this rabbit hole of, I can't trust this, I can't trust this. That's the opposite of what we're taught in yoga and ahimsa, do no harm, and all these things, these principles of what yoga is, at least to me. That is literally the opposite, and it's hard for me to watch, and I can get emotional thinking about it, because I'm like, how are you thinking that? How do you think light and love is going to protect you? Like, I don't get it, but like, I respect it, and that's great, but I just don't agree, and that's okay too.
Yeah, there's something too here, that there's like a softness to everyone's process, like whatever that means, that I've noticed is like cool. Like, we're and like tomorrow, it's like the next step of that process and the next step of the process. Like from the moment you think about like where you got to in this exact moment, let's say around holistic health, like maybe in your whole lifetime, you got to this exact moment, to like how you beautifully put, like my nice blend of Eastern and Western, like it got you to this exact moment. It's like, weren't born with that, like that took you time. And like in 5-20 years, like let's recap and see where you're at in that process. Like maybe it'll
Sure.
be in that exact spot, or maybe it'll be more here or here, like we don't know. But that's been something that I've really, and that was like coming through, is it's like remembering that it's a process for each of us, and like that the humanity piece to that process, like even if like it feels very unshared, like right, it's sort of like that very individual, and yet like there's a lot through community that could be shared to offer perspective and in different ways. And I'm sure that in the past year especially, like some of these conversations are coming to light in some of your events, and I'm sure it takes some like fortitude to manage how you want to even show up, you know as a leader, uh holding space that these types of conversations can come up, but there's an integrity to you and your process, and like that intuition and trust piece, which I think too at the heart of yoga, it's like that. And for a lot of people, through what we've gone through, are like hijacked from intuition. And so like forget even trusting anyone for a second. Like, can we get to that piece of self-trust? And like so much of your programming is to that. And like I just, even your honesty of like, I'm actually really scared. Like to even be able to say like, I'm really scared, and this is how I'm navigating a time where I feel really scared. I'm not hearing a lot of leaders like even say that. Like, hey, this is scary, it's confusing, I don't know, this is what I do know, this is what I sort of know. And it's just so refreshing to hear someone honestly like talk about their process, and like talk about where they're at in their process. And I'm wondering for you, when you think about the word hope, or like your driving forces, what is that every day for you, and what keeps you going forward and keeps you, flowing right now?
Mhm. So I guess my hope is that each day that there's an event or a workshop or even a silly as an IG post, like even that resistance is there too. Like, okay, how do I be like this yogi disconnected when I'm like all day posting? But my hope, and it's usually kind of like, I guess, reminded, is when I do have a post or a newsletter, that like I'll get a text from a friend or a follower and be like, oh wow, or like, I did that the other day. I used your video for like my meditation. I heard someone say that. Or one of my things was like, oh, just a reminder, if you like need more steps, like park your car a little further, which of
Mhm.
course I heard from someone else, and someone like wrote back on IG like, oh man, that's such a great idea. And again, I like kind of laughed because, there's so much that I don't know when it comes to like probably math or history. And like I'm like totally like, I don't know, one of my friends said intellectually curious. Like I just want to learn about like all these different things. And I think the hope of it is that if I can show a shift, because like you said, no, I wasn't always in this world. Like I ate peanut butter and jelly only until I was 12. I quit almost all the sports except tennis because it had the least running. Let me think of it pillars: nature and outside. Definitely not. I did not like to be outside. I just started camping now with my boyfriend, and I like laughed because he's like, "What? You've never done that?" I was like, "No, I needed to stay at a really nice hotel." Like, so yeah, like transparency, no, that isn't not my natural way of being. But then again, like you said too, like as I start to try new things out and I see that it's working for me, I have the hope that maybe one of the things I'm doing could be also practiced by someone else. And that's it. It sounds so cheesy, but like if just one person, noticed something I said or did, or something of an event that I created, and they laughed with that feeling of like, oh, okay, yoga is not just being in a back bend. Nature doesn't have to be, super hot and sweaty and scared of bears, right? Like all the things that, like, again, I probably felt, we're all one, or someone else is having this experience. Like, this is not the first time that someone's having a conversation, right? It's all kind of connected. So, yeah, my hope is to be able to influence at least one person to connect to themselves, and like, yeah, find maybe a little bit more inner peace too.
So beautiful. So please spread the word right now with our listeners where they can find you. What's the best way for them to maybe engage with your membership? If they're local, certainly I'll be at Friday's event, but this will have aired and it'll be over, but I know there's others coming. But where can we send everyone?
Sure. So my website definitely has everything. It's an easy way to connect and to find out about what events are coming up. You'll get prompted as soon as you get there. Real Connections with an S, SoFla, so for southflorida.com. And on that website, as soon as it pops up, you can sign up for the newsletter, which I usually just send one or two a month, but that will always let you know, all right, what's happening this month. And then in the newsletters, I really love to share like the tips, tools, and techniques that I have learned from the experts. So you're still getting a little bit, even if you can't make it. Obviously, IG, as I mentioned, it's not necessarily something I like to be on all the time, but I know that it is helpful, or I'm hoping it is. So same thing at Real Connections SoFla. And then I am very trained in my corporate experience. So I will get back to you in emails as well, because a big thing, of course, is being an effective communicator. And that is being able to be in dialogue with people that are curious. So yeah, all three of those. And upcoming this fall, I have a lot of big things coming up. Starting in October, I will be teaching yoga at Swinton Community Garden, the food forest in Delray, as well as Mounts Botanicals, which is in West Palm Beach. Myself plus a couple other teachers. We have a nice series going on. And as of October, we are launching in Miami Beach. So every week on this gorgeous rooftop, we will be sharing all the things related with another company, Wealth Collective. And then in November, I have been hired to be the production event planner for the Yoga Expo, which is now the Global Yoga Conference. And we will have an in-person event with around 300 people. And then we're also online. So Real Connections helps Ari with this programming. And into December, throwing a cool surf and social event in Boynton Beach. So lots of awesome things coming up outside in community, and just doing what I love is just being around people that just want to, share and show love and show up.
Awesome, Jess. And I would say for our listeners, if you're at a point in your journey and you're like, where do I begin? I would definitely say Jess can be a powerful guide for you, especially if you're looking to explore any of these pillars or buckets and just go deeper. I think this time for a lot of people, it brings a lot up to be healed, but then it also lets you go deeper. And I know you're in good hands with Jess. So thank you so much. We'll include all that in the show notes. And if you can take one thing today that pings, that just like, I gotta finish that sentence, own that. And really your health is so much more than any decision you can make one time. It's the decisions you make many times and many days. So that's something we're both super passionate about. Thank you, Jess. And thank you all. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Lila Life Show. Be sure to share, like, and comment. Tune in next week. And if you're not already a member of the Lila Life Collective, you'll want to be. So take a look in the show notes and be sure you sign up today. Have a beautiful day.